What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Drive for Show, DFS for Dough here on Rotogrinders. Happy to be with you talking golf here for another week. I am Justin Van Zuiden, aka STL Cardinals 84, shaking off the rust a little bit after a week off. Thanks to Trey and Noto and Jacob for filling in last week for the memorial. And how was your guys' show last week? We'll bring in usual co-host Notorious, always with us, aka Derek Farnsworth. Noto, how was the memorial for you guys?
Yeah, it was fun having those two on. Definitely give a different perspective than we're used to. You know, Trey's all about ownership. Jacob's all about, swing pass and all that fun stuff. So it was fun having them on. And I kind of liked hosting. You know, I didn't have to say a whole lot about the guys I like. Just, kept throwing questions to those two.
Yeah, Noto's got it figured out now. See, I got the easy gig here. He's gonna kick me out. I'm kind of glad I wasn't around last week, because I certainly wouldn't have pegged Horschel as the favorite play. And Saturday, he just kind of rocketed up the leaderboard, and it was his tournament to lose at that point. So kudos to him on a kind of coasting victory there on Sunday at 13 under par. Shot that 65 on Saturday. Which put him in the lead for good, and bogey-free round. Didn't really do it all with the short game. He was pretty solid all across the board. So Horschel got the victory there last week. Aaron Wise, Patrick Cantlay, Joaquin Niemann, Max Homa, Will Zalatoris, guys rounding out that top five, and all players that were fairly popular in DFS last week as well. So would have been really interesting for the prize pools if they would have been competing for the top, but Horschel wouldn't have been on my radar. So what were some of your takeaways from last week's tournament?
Yeah, no exposure to Horschel for me. Just that great Saturday round, like you mentioned. And then I had a Homa outright. I had a Niemann outright. Both of them kind of made big runs on Sunday. So I was hoping for a Horschel collapse, similar to the one that we saw from Cam Young. 12 over. He pulled a full Harold Varner there. So, I was hoping for that, but, he was just steady all day, hitting a bunch of greens. I think he only had, a couple bogeys. And even when he was in trouble, he, managed to get away with some pars. Then he made that long 50-foot eagle, and, all hope was crushed. So congrats to him. It was cool seeing, his family run out there on the 18th green right after he won. I don't know what he told his daughters, but they were a lot more excited after he said something to them. I don't know. Getting them, something special for him winning. I don't know, but that was pretty cool. The little kid running out there too, little boy. Cool moment. Horschel's one of those guys we like to hate on for his antics, but seems like a good dude. Loves golf. I think he's different, which is always good for the tour. So I'm glad he won. Other than it cost me a little bit of money.
He promised all the kids get a Porsche when they turn 16 or something, and it's who knows. But we get in our little DFS bubbles and like to hate certain players, but easy to remember in moments like that. Everybody's human and entitled to happiness, particularly in that moment. So good for Horschel. Not great for our DFS lineups. I did play a little bit last week on vacation, but probably would have been better off if I'd have just let it go. Still had to throw some golf lineups in, though, and that Sunday was crazy. You mentioned the round from Cam Young, and what's almost crazier is he had plenty of neighbors. Chan Kim shot an 83, KH Lee shot an 82, Cameron Tringali shot a 78, Troy Merritt shot an 80, Johnny Vegas shot an 81, and there was a couple other like 77, 78s on the scoreboard there on Sunday. So, of course, did play pretty difficult. Didn't see a whole lot of rounds under par on Sunday, and made that even par round with the lead. All that more impressive there from Horschel. And that's kind of the news of last week, which has quickly dissipated here as we head to Monday. We've got a busy week this week, and we've got a pretty weak tournament. We're the week before a major. We've got the U.S. Open next week. So you're going to see a pretty weak field here. We've got a new course for the RBC Canadian Open, which we'll break down for you here over the next 45 minutes or so. But this tournament has not been contested for the last 2 years because of COVID. We've got a course that hasn't hosted this tournament for the last decade. And really, with the weak field, kind of thins out the talking points a little bit. So we've got some time. We've got the U.S. Open next week. So all the big U.S. Open qualifiers have been taking place today, with guys trying to earn the final spots into the U.S. Open. And, of course, the new tour, the Saudi-backed tour, that everyone's been talking about over the past couple months. They're having their first event this week, and Phil Mickelson has finally broken his silence and said, yeah, I'm going to play. He signed a gigantic money deal to play in this first event in London this week, and that's kind of seemed to dominate the golf world headlines today. And there's also some rumors about Ricky Fowler potentially joining up with this new tour. So your thoughts on all that news that's kind of hit here over the last 24 hours?
I mean, my favorite rumor that's come out is that Tiger Woods passed up figures in the high nines. So that's, close to $1 billion passed up from joining the Liv Tour. He'd only have to play, I guess, who knows how much he would have to play. But it's good to see him not go over there. Ricky, I really hope he doesn't go, but at this point, I wouldn't blame him. He's not making a ton of money on the PGA Tour. All of these guys, I mean, this is their livelihood. It's not like, they're just extremely so much money. I mean, you can't blame these guys. I do hate the way that they try to justify it, though. Just say you're taking it for the money.
Say I'm taking my paycheck and I'm going for it. That's all you got to say. Nobody. No, shouldn't say nobody, because keyboard warriors are going to have their way, but most rational people aren't going to fault you for that.
Yeah, and then the other interesting thing was Kevin Na, resigned from the PGA Tour. So I think he's trying to get ahead of some legal stuff. So we'll see if that kind of trends to the other players as well. But just an interesting time for golf. I don't know if it's good or bad. Competition's usually good, but this is not the competition that we kind of want to see. But I don't know. I'm excited to see it get started, and I'm excited to see what the majors are going to do with all these guys as well.
They rolled out a commercial spot over the weekend that was the most generic looking commercial you could ever see, and the website right now looks like it was designed by a 12-year-old. So don't get your hopes up for this fancy like shot tracker and stuff, though. They have said that they're going to have streaming of the tournament on their website, which I believe is like livgolf.com or something like that, which is spelled LIV for those of you who aren't familiar. But it's just weird, the branding and all that stuff. And it just kind of seems like it's, kind of been put together haphazardly. And I know our good buddy Wiley on Twitter has been comparing it to the Fire Festival, which again, if you're not familiar, was this gigantic music festival that was supposed to take place a few years ago. It was supposed to have all these big name, rock and R&B and, superstars of music at the time. Time goes by so fast. Maybe it's been 5 or 6 years now. But anyway, they sold all these really expensive tickets, and it was supposed to be in the Bahamas or Jamaica or somewhere in the Caribbean. And, the first patrons started to get there, and the first food offering was like PB&J sandwiches or something like that. And then they ended up basically finding out that this whole thing was a sham. I'm not saying that this Liv Golf Tour is that, but, Wiley's kind of been comparing it to that as far as just what it looks like in terms of the website and how haphazardly it's all come together. Just makes one a little bit suspicious. But with the money they're throwing around, certainly feels like there's a little more backing there than the Fire Festival had. But for those of you that are familiar with that, it doesn't conjure up great memories. So I don't know. It'll be really interesting to see where it heads. They've got a 48-man field in London this week, and that kicks off on Thursday as well. So, Go ahead.
I was gonna say, honestly, their best path to success would be to make it the best sweat in golf. Just develop the best shot tracker. Mic up the caddies and all the golfers. So
Well,
when
the
they're
commercial
streaming,
says fire finishes and intense rivalries and all
I mean,
these generic things.
but I mean, the thing that we love the most is the sweat. That's why golf has gotten so big over the last couple of years is betting and DFS, and everyone just wants to see every shot. And so their best path to success would be that, in my opinion. And it doesn't look like they're going that route. They're just throwing money at anything that sticks. And but it'll be. I heard they're doing shotgun starts. Maybe I don't know what.
Yeah, that was in the commercial as well, though. I'm not sure what that adds. What does that add?
Less time to watch, shorter golf tournament. I don't know. I don't get it.
I don't know. Like your guy's starting on 14. Like what is it just makes no sense to me. And there's supposed to be like a team aspect to this, I guess.
Nobody knows.
But nobody knows. Like exactly. It's just all crazy. I have no idea. But the hope, I guess, is that slowly the bigger name players start to go over. And if you start to get 2 top 10, top 15 players, and then you get another couple, and then that's the key, is it's got to take off. Like if they have to be banking on it taking off, because if this is your strength of field every week with only 48 golfers or whatever it is, somewhere in that range, we talk about it all the time in the WGCs and stuff for DFS, the no cut events. Like the DFS sweat is boring and mundane compared to your normal event with a cut and all that. And I get, betting and stuff like that. Sure. But I don't know. It feels like in order for this to have extended traction and viewership and, revenue and big TV deals and all that stuff, like you've got to get some of the bigger names to commit over time, or else it's almost doomed to fail, you think?
Yeah. And I think the argument is, guys like just the mid to high range guys like Sam Burns, Terrell Hatton, a couple that are in this week's field, they're going to see, Lee Westwood making 10 times the money they are. And they're going to think, well, I could just go over there, play half or a third of the tournaments and, make way more money. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out after, a month or so, when all these guys are just making a ton of money, and the PGA Tour, you're grinding for your card or whatever it may be, you're grinding cuts and, playing every other week. So, I mean, there's appeal to it from a golfer standpoint if you just take out the morality aspect.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how that goes over time. Certainly something to monitor. We also, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, had the U.S. Open qualifiers concluding today. Not a ton of big names have qualified, and Ricky Fowler failed in his qualification effort. But this week is often a week where we do see quite a few withdrawals from players who maybe qualify for the U.S. Open. But scanning the leaderboards right before we came on the air, I didn't see a whole lot of noteworthy names that I think we'd be sitting at big withdrawal risk this week. So some weeks we've had 8 to 10 guys withdraw from this tournament the week before the U.S. Open. I'm sure we'll have a few this week, but maybe not quite as many as normal. So any thoughts or anything else you want to get into on the U.S. Open qualifiers before we head into this tournament?
Haven't been paying too much attention. Little man's first day of summer, so he's home all day, every day with me. So I'm trying to get him to do, some off-season schoolwork and all that nonsense. So I haven't paid too much attention to the leaderboard yet, but I did see a 57-year-old guy, local guy, qualify. So I think that's a cool story. That's some of the best part of these, qualifiers, is hearing some of the stories of guys that you just never heard of. Yeah,
for sure. I didn't see who that was either, as far as the name goes, but the big tournament, the big qualifier is generally one of the ones in Ohio that I believe had 13 spots available. And I'm going to pull up the leaderboard for that now just to see. About 30 minutes ago, that one was not completed yet. So we'll see where they're at now. So Wedgwood, they are wrapping up. It looks like 13 spots available as far as the top guys in that right now. Chan Kim is 12 under, Davis Riley, Lanto Griffin 11 under, Adam Schenk 9 under, Denny McCarthy 7 under, Joel Damon, Patrick Rogers 6 under, Adam Svensson, Wyndham Clark, Hayden Buckley, 5 under. And right now that would be the cutoff point. But again, a lot of these guys still have 4 or 5 holes to go. So again, not a lot of big names. I mean, a couple of those guys are in the field this week. None of them that are going to have extremely high ownership. Svensson would be the most interesting one because A, he's Canadian, and B, I always like to play him, and I've tagged him up as a value this week. So he's the one I'm keeping an eye on. But not a lot of big names that should shift the field a whole lot this week in terms of DFS play. So with that, we can go ahead and shift gears and finally start talking about this week's tournament. But again, I don't think it's going to take a ton of time for us to get through. We've got a new course. We've got a tournament that hasn't been contested since 2019 because of the pandemic. This is the only tournament on North American soil that got canceled each of the last 2 years. So, I mean, course history, haven't seen this course in 12 years. Basically non-existent. Like, is there anything related to history at this tournament that you would even remotely consider this week?
No, I don't think so. You mentioned 2010, the last time they played it. Carl Pedersen won, and I don't even think we can put too much of an emphasis on, the scoring from back then. Golf has changed a ton. Technology has changed a ton, and they've redone a lot of the course. I think they've widened the fairways. They've taken out some trees. So I don't think you should weight course history at all. In the first look, I did put just RBC Canadian Open history, if you want to look at that for, maybe guys just have good vibes at this event. But I'm weighing course history with a 0 this week. As far as the course goes, it's a par 70, just over 7,000 yards. So extremely short. And there are 3 par 5s, which makes it even shorter. And 4 of the par 3s are over 200 yards. So, I mean, this is going to be an extremely short course. The par 5s should just be able to feast on them if they hit the fairway. The par 4s look pretty easy on paper as well. And who knows how the course is going to play. I mean, typically we see these as more technical tracks. Certainly don't have to be a bomber with the course that only measures 7,000 yards. I've heard differing reports about the fairways. Wiley just posted a text on Twitter from somebody on the grounds. He said the fairways are pretty generous. Other people have said, the rough's extremely penal, so you're going to have to hit all the fairways. So I don't really know how it's going to play off the tee. I think just getting it in place is probably going to be your best bet. Approach is always a good statistic to rely on. And then the greens themselves, they are bent grass. They used to be a mix of bent and Poe, but they are now just strictly bent grass if you want to look at those splits. And the idea what the winning score is going to be, I know it's just a guess, but Eric Patterson lives in Toronto. He said, EPAT on Twitter, he said there's going to be 1 to 2 inches of rain tonight and tomorrow. So it's going to be, extremely wet, extremely soft. I'm thinking we get to 20 under. What about you?
Ooh, the only thing that gives me a little pause in there is the par 70. Usually we see the extreme shootouts when you got 4 par 5s, but you just don't see a whole lot of courses on when's the last time we've seen a 7,000 yard course? Anytime we see these
3 par 5s,
we see 72, 7,300 yards is relatively short by PGA Tour standards these days. And you mentioned the par 5s, even though we have 1 less than what you would on a par 72, they're going to be reachable in 2 for these guys. I was going to say 18, so I wouldn't be surprised if we get to 20. Maybe we'll split the difference and we'll call our official guess for the show purposes 19 under. You can put 20 in the survey. I'll put 18. We'll average it to 19. I think that's a pretty good range for sure.
That'll be perfect. Any other takes on the course? I'm just listening to what everyone has to say this week.
Yeah, no, I mean, it seems like, especially if they get a lot of rain and it's soft, you're certainly not going to need to prioritize distance by any means. Gonna maybe give a little bit more. The course, there's a lot of elevation changes and the greens are very slopey. So I do think this week more so than a lot of others. I think guys who are feeling it with their short game right now and have some confidence on and around the greens, I do think that carries some weight this week.
Yeah, if it does turn into one of those events where everyone's hitting greens, those putters come into play. So yeah, I'm not weighing anything too heavily. Just I think you're gonna have to make a lot of birdies.
All right, let's go ahead and dig in, and we can talk about the field here this week. And again, it's a relatively weak field, especially once we get to the mid-range. You'll really start to notice the quick drop-off the week before a major. Not surprising, especially since we've had some big name tournaments here over the last month or so. So our 10K plus names on DraftKings, we've got Scheffler, Justin Thomas, Rory, Cam Smith, Shane Lowry, and Sam Burns. How are you quickly, first glance, ranking those top guys?
I think I heard 12 of the top 25 in the world are here, and then it's just nobody else. So it's an interesting field for sure. Definitely brings into play more of the stars and scrubs builds if you can get them, because the 8Ks and 7Ks aren't as strong as they usually are. So that's something to keep in mind this week. As far as the 10K options go, I think my favorite is going to be Rory. He won this event, the last time they played it. Not that it was at the same course, but he's been in great form. He typically gains strokes everywhere, and then it just kind of take your chances on and around the greens. But yeah, I like Rory. He's a little bit cheaper than JT and Scheffler, which I think can come in handy. Also like Shane Lowry. He's now had 12 straight starts of T35 or better worldwide. So guy that's just doing everything pretty well right now. But Sam Burns coming off the win. Cam Smith played great for 2.5 rounds last week. Can never go wrong with Scheffler, especially if I fade him. So I don't know. Who's your favorites up here?
It's Scheffler. I've learned my lesson now. It's okay. Scheffler until he gives us a reason not to. It's Scheffler because it's always Scheffler. Like, I finally played him, and he almost won again.
Okay.
And he didn't burn me. And it's just every week it's Scheffler, and nobody, like, Scheffler always ends up being under-owned compared to the other top guys, because we all want to look for reasons not to play Scheffler because, he's the most expensive, or, he's got to let down soon. I'm done doing that for now, man. He's prime Tiger until he proves otherwise. So Scheffler, it's just an auto Scheffler.
I'll go out on a limb here and say he's not going to have another birdie-free round this week.
So, as much as I don't want to do it, it's Scheffler. So I think the other guys are obviously in play, but again, right now we've got Rory and Thomas as the two highest owned. I think in terms of creativity, I'd maybe give Thomas the edge. Rory is the defending champion, quote unquote, of this event. Again, not putting much stock into that, given that it was 3 years ago. But I'll certainly keep those guys in my player pool. Lowry always tends to be a little underowned as well. And there will be sticker shock with Lowry at 10-1. So I'll probably keep him in my mix as well. I don't know if this course sets up as well for Smith and Burns. So they're probably a little under the others, but it's tough. It's tough to exclude these guys, because if you do it comparative to the rest of the field, like, these guys aren't really overpriced, but then you get down, you're paying $9,700 for Varner, or $9,200 for Munoz, and nothing against those guys, but we're used to those guys being so much cheaper. So because there is such a stark drop off in the quality of the field, it's really hard to exclude some of these top guys because they're the most appropriately priced of the bunch.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I mean, how often do we see three guys in the single digits in terms of their outright numbers? I mean, we never see that. We usually barely see one guy in the single digits. And so right now, Scheffler, JT, Rory, all under 10-1 on most books, which is pretty crazy. So obviously a lot of the win equity is coming up top. So yeah, I don't hate the idea of just getting some exposure to, 5 of these guys, maybe 4 of the 6. And then just kind of going from there.
Yeah, I think that's a decent strategy. I'll certainly have a few more lineups with maybe at least one of these guys for sure. And then, kind of go from there after that. So, but Scheffler number 1, just by default for now, until he proves otherwise. All right. Once we get into the 9Ks, we do see a little bit, at least in terms of our initial projected ownership, of things kind of being with a lot of guys kind of in that low to mid teens in terms of ownership. No massive chalk emerging. You've got Finau and Hatton and Connors, a few guys that have been pretty inconsistent this year. You've got Hadwin, Canadian guy. You've got Fitzpatrick, who I think is a nice fit for the course, who I expected to be probably the chalk in this range, and maybe his ownership will grow. But he did miss a cut in his last start. So that was an abnormally poor short game performance from Fitzpatrick. I think he'll rebound with that putter. And if you want to look at courses, kind of correlated courses to this, this would seem to be a course that Fitzpatrick would take a liking to. So a little bit of conjecture there, but I like Fitzpatrick at the start of that 9K range. What are you looking at in there?
Yeah, so love Fitz this week. Over the last 9 months, he's number one in this field of strokes gained putting, and he gained 6.5 strokes tee to green last week in 2 rounds and missed the cut. Just like you mentioned, completely abnormal week. It's an outlier. Throw that out. He lost 7 strokes putting. That's not going to happen again in 2 rounds, probably the rest of the year. So love Fitz. You mentioned the course fit. He's been awesome. He's been a top 10 machine all year. And I know he hasn't won on the PGA Tour, but he does have 7 wins in Europe. So I do think he's a winner. I think it's only a matter of time before he gets that first one in America or Canada, in North America, I should say. Varner feels overpriced to me, still feeling the burn from that final round of Colonial. Munoz kind of in that same overpriced a little bit, although he's been really good. He's just been very consistent. The tee to green's been there. But I like Connors. He gained over 10 strokes ball striking last week at Memorial. I just had a bad short game week. I think Hatton's interesting. Finau's been playing better, but I really want a down week from him because I love him at the U.S. Open. So I'll probably have some shares, just not as much as the 17% that we haven't projected for. And then Kirk. I've just been playing Kirk every week. He continues to play well. He's got a very similar skill set to Matt Fitzpatrick, just a little bit worse of a putter, but he's gained off the tee in 14 straight events. Chris Kirk, a guy that you don't think of as a good driver of the ball. So he's going to put himself in good spots, especially if these fairways end up being tough to hit. I think that's a big edge for him.
Yeah, I like that call. He's a guy that I have missed on throughout a lot of that run. So similar to Scheffler with you, it's tough for me to jump aboard with Kirk after missing a good. I've played him a few times, I guess, but if you played him every week, certainly you're ahead of where most of the field has been with him. Given his 2022 season, stats are pretty rock solid across the board, and at 9,100 doesn't seem like he's that overpriced, relatively speaking, in this field. Anybody you are off in this range?
I don't think I'm going to play like the Bombers. So I'm going to be lower on Finau. I'm probably going to be off Killer Keith Mitchell. I don't know what to do with Hadwin. I think it's a good course fit for him, but I like Connor so much more at 300 more if I'm going to play a Canadian in this range. What are you doing with Hadwin?
Yeah, I like him. I think, again, on DraftKings, it's a little bit of sticker shock. Relatively speaking, he's a little better on FanDuel, where he's right over the average at 10-1. So I like him a lot on FanDuel. But on DraftKings, I think if that ownership, especially if it starts to trend down a little bit, you look back in late March, early April, he had 3 top 10s in a row. Filtered the last 36 rounds. He's 13th in this field in approach and 7th around the green. So again, if you're putting priorities on approach play and, short game play, I think Hadwin is fine. Certainly Connors has the, more consistent history with the ball striking. And I think that's where a lot of people will end up going. But I like Hadwin. I think he's better on FanDuel, and I think he's better in GPPs. I think if you're doing single entry or you're doing cash games this week, he probably doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and the thing with Hadwin, he might be my favorite bet of the week. He's 50-1, which is
awesome. Shouldn't be. He shouldn't be that high in this field.
And he's 9,300 on DraftKings. So it's just a weird mix of matching up odds and salary just because it's so top heavy.
Yeah, and there are a few discrepancies in salaries between DraftKings and FanDuel this week and Yahoo. So we don't see that a whole lot these days, but just based on the field and salaries came out a little bit later than normal today on Monday as well. So some opportunities to maybe take advantage in the betting markets or in the different DFS sites this week. All right. I agree with you on, I'm kind of off the Bombers this week. I play Finau a lot, but I am not on him this week either. And like you, an implosion this week would be just fine if that's going to get everyone off of him for next week. So I was very tilted by Patrick Reed last week because, as everybody knows, I never play him. And then he backdoored a made cut with 2 or 3 under par round on Friday, and that annoyed me because at one good tournament and Patrick Reed becomes chalky again. And I know we talked about this a couple weeks ago when he was like 7,500 or whatever, and that was fine. But he was, the price is back up, and he just snuck through the cut last week, and whatever, it irritated me. But now back to 8,900 for Patrick Reed and 10% ownership. No thanks on Reed for me. But this is where we start to see this field. I mean, you've got Mackenzie Hughes and Justin Rose in the 8Ks, the high 8Ks, and it's strange to see that this is why the Stars and Scrubs lineup will become a little bit popular. Because, I mean, frankly, from 83 to 8,900, I don't see anybody in there that I have to have. I mean, Vegas is fine, but he imploded on Sunday last week as well, and he's probably going to be the chalkiest. So I don't really like anyone from 83 to 89, I don't think.
I agree in that my favorite plays are below 8,300. So you guys can do the quick math there on who we're talking about. But in that range, hey, I've played Patrick Reed 2 weeks in a row, and T7, T53, not terrible. He switched back to his old driver, and he's gained off the tee, I think, in 3 of his last 5 now. The irons have been okay. We know the short game's there. And speaking of juicy outright numbers, he's 65-1 this week on DraftKings. I like that number. You can, sprinkle in the top 10 as well. But yeah, I'm with you on Rose. Just never a guy that you can peg. Tigala, I think he's better suited for those longer tracks. Vegas is fine. But yeah, for me, it's all about Brendan Todd, CT Pan. So Todd's a guy that hits a ton of fairways, elite putter, and he's gained on approach in 5 of his last 6, coming off of one of his best finishes of the year. I like that quite a bit. And CT Pan, quietly, just similar skill set to Todd in that hits a ton of fairways, very good, except he's good with the irons instead of the putter. And so I like him as well at 8,100.
Yeah, I like those are the type of guys I'm going at this week. Todd is certainly my favorite. I've had anti-Brendan Todd bias for years since we've been playing DFS, back during the stretch when he was horrible. But he's going to hit fairways and greens. We know he can putt, and he's 8,200, not bad. I believe his last start he finished 3rd, so pretty solid for 8,200 when you consider his neighbors in salary. So give me Todd at 8,200, and then kind of starting to roll down into the higher end of the 7K range. Aaron Rye is a guy that I've played quite a bit at 7,900. Mark Hubbard makes a lot of cuts. I mean, it really starts to get thin down here in the 7Ks. And there's not going to be a whole lot of other guys that, were jumping up and down to roster, but anybody that stands out to you in the kind of 76 to 7,900 range?
For whatever reason, my model always loves Pat Perez. He's kind of played a little bit better recently. 12th and the 26th his last 2 times out. Mostly been short game, which I never love, but he's better on these shorter courses. He tends to lose a lot of strokes off the tee. So if he can club down, the rest of his game is pretty solid. You mentioned Rye and Hubbard. I think they're both strong options in the high, 7s. Rye's more of a ball striker. Hubbard's more of a short game guy, but I think they both, fit this course pretty well. After that, man, I don't like anybody else. I wish I had something, but I don't. Champ, Spawn, Long, I'll fade all those guys.
Yeah, it's just, and right now we've got Smotherman with some ownership. Smalley, we've played a lot in the past, but a lot of these guys haven't shown anything lately. I read a lot of positive things on Danny Willett heading into last week. I played him for the first time in probably about 3 years, and he shot like 9 over. So that was a one and done attempt at playing some Danny Willett. Martin Laird hasn't done much lately, so it just starts to get really ugly as we get down towards the bottom end of the 7K range. The one guy that kind of stood out to me, that's had some pretty solid form, doesn't play on the a ton on the PGA Tour, but David Lipsky's been playing really well, and I see our projections kind of like him. Looks like your model numbers kind of like him. I kind of like him. So, I mean, is he going to be the guy that a lot of people end up gravitating towards? Really weak field, but relatively speaking, give me some 7,300 David Lipsky. Never thought I'd be saying that.
Yeah, I love it. He's been playing pretty well in like the low sevens, high sixes. So not much of a sticker shock there with him at 7,300. He's been good on approach, gained in 5 of the last 6. He loves bent grass greens. So I'm with you there. And then Jamino, who does our projections, he always writes me about why is Schwab popping in my model every week. He pops up in my model, and I say the same thing. I don't know why his stats aren't that great. He's really good around the greens. That's about it. But yeah, for whatever reason, our model's like Matthias Schwab. So if you want to trust the numbers, I guess you play him at 73 as well.
And they really like him. Our lineup HQ right now has him at 12% for a top 5. I'll take the under on that. 12% for top 5. I think if you really believe that number,
hammer that one. Yeah.
Run and bet Schwab for a top 5. But I think that's probably a little hot. But I don't mind him. But especially given the strength of this field, I think he's all right to roster. But I do think maybe our projections are just a tad hot on him. But I gotta say, ever since Jamino started doing some of the projection stuff, like the model liked Mito before, we kind of did over the last year or so, but the model numbers have liked him a lot. And then he went out and almost won a major. So maybe the model is onto something with Schwab. We'll see. He posts that top 5 this week. We'll buy Jamino a drink. Anybody else above 7K that catches your eye?
Nate Lashley, a guy that I haven't said in a very long time. He pops for me a little bit. Hasn't been in great form, but when he does make the cut, so he's finished T27 or better in 6 of his last 9 if you take out the WD. So that's at least, some sign of form. Sabatini, you mentioned Svensson. I like him quite a bit. If you want to play the Canadian angle, you can certainly do that. He's very good with his irons. So
he's not pulling out of this event just because he qualifies for the U.S. Open. It's not like he's
this is his major. I mean, come on.
Yeah, he's Canadian, and it's not like he's presumably not like he's got millions banked, and just okay qualifying for the U.S. Open. So, although I do think that qualifier got interrupted. It's been on the same holes for like 30 minutes, 45 minutes. So either A, the scoring isn't updating, which is very possible, or B, they've been interrupted by weather, which I think is what has happened because I know there's a lot of rain going through Ohio. So they might not finish that till tomorrow. But in any case, I don't think he's at this severe withdrawal risk.
Yeah, I agree. The big question, what are you doing with Doug Gim? 7K.
I was a little tilted that he made the cut last week because we broke up a few weeks back. And then, I take a week off the show and he was in the mix, like heading into Saturday. He was maybe top 10 or so. And I mean, top 20, he was at least in striking distance, but he shot a 78 on Sunday and dropped to 60th hanging out with Cam Young there last week. So I don't know. The short game numbers are just too rough. Like the first round, he lost 2.6 putting. The fourth round, he lost 1.9 putting, didn't make any birdies. It's a weak field, but I don't think I can go there. I've tried it too often.
Yeah,
especially if he's going to be popular.
So I'm with you.
Your model doesn't hate him compared to the.
He likes him, but he likes him. It likes him, but double-digit ownership on Gim. He'll probably make the cut. I just worry about his upside because of his putter.
If you want to go for the upside, the guy that used to be the cut maker, you can just take Adam Schenk at 6.9K.
9.3 strokes ball striking gained last week in Memorial.
I don't mind him at that salary.
Nice price point too. #nice. I like him a little bit. The thing with the numbers at Memorial is they're always so misleading because there's so many big numbers out there that I remember last year or the year before, Joel Damon lost like 16 strokes ball striking. So his numbers, anytime he ran any kind of model, were off for like 6 months. But the fact that he gained it is at least somewhat interesting.
They're saying there's a big disparity from the good and the bad because of the big scores.
So like Cam Young, like if you just looked at percentage of round gain from last week, he'd be great because he gained in 3 or 4. But instead, you're gonna look at his numbers and he's gonna lose like 6 strokes or something from one bad round because it was all anyway. So that's just a random data thought there. I like Bryce Garnett a little bit at 6,700. Danny Lee's a guy that can make a lot of birdies. I don't mind him. For a reason, he's played this event great over the years. And that's about it. I'm seeing Robert Garrigus. I thought he went over to the Saudi League.
I thought he did as well. Maybe they didn't want him.
They sent him back.
Once they got Phil, he was the last man out. Now I gotta find some news on this. So, yeah, there's apparently a Twitter account called Liv Tout that said, "Where is Robert Garrigus? We demand answers." I promise it's not by burner. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know. Like, did they say no thanks to him?
Maybe the PGA Tour said he could smoke weed now, so he's back.
He's good to go. That's interesting. Well, I think I'm still off of Garrigus for now. Ever since I saw him putting with the little kids putter at that event about 2 months ago.
I was looking at our projections that Jamino does, and Scott Gucheski, Scotty G, third in point per dollar ratings right now.
Now, those are very skewed. I told Jamino we gotta have a manual edit here because right now, Mike Weir is the best point per dollar play in the field. And I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that that's probably not correct.
Yeah, so, I was gonna not say that, not throw him under the bus there, but no. Yeah, he apparently is pulling in data from the Champions Tour.
That's got to be what it is, because Weir's been playing on the Champions Tour. He probably hasn't made a cut on the PGA Tour in a decade. But that's all in good fun. The numbers that get there eventually, but sometimes with the model numbers, they get a little bit weird if the players haven't played too many events on the PGA Tour. But Gucheski is not that guy. He's been playing on the PGA Tour and he's done okay. I mean, relatively speaking, he's been okay. And you're not going to find 20s. Much. Yeah, you're not going to find much at 6K. To 6,500. That you're really running up and down to roster. So he's probably the most in play of anybody under 6,600. That it's not a ringing endorsement, but it's there if you want to dig deep.
Yeah, give me Scotty G over Doug Gim straight up at 1/10 ownership.
I'm probably not going below Schenk. I'm fine with Schenk. I don't think I'm going below Schenk.
Let me see if there's anybody else.
Hoffman's in there. Where the mighty have fallen.
Norlander, Ryder, Bo Hoag, and that's about it for me in my model. Don't really like any of them though.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't see myself getting
Carlos Ortiz.
He's falling off a cliff.
6,700. How wild is that?
What's his? You got his recent performances there.
He made the cut last week, but was almost dead last. And then he's actually made 3 of 5 cuts and 1 missed cut on the number. It's not terrible.
Oh, I would have guessed worse than that. I think he might have had a couple of those missed cuts might have been ugly.
Yeah,
but there's not a whole lot digging down into the 6K range to get super excited about this week. So I don't think I have anybody else on my radar, and Schenk at 6,900 is probably the end of my player pool. I don't see anything in the way of questions. Somebody in the YouTube chat did mention that Danny Woodhead, former NFL running back, was in one of the US Open qualifiers today. Did not qualify, but still interesting to see some of those names that, end up giving it a shot and are pretty good golfers. So.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I remember back in the Outlaw Tour days, we were trying to get somebody in the DFS industry to go play in one of those events because you just had to pay. I don't think you had to have any qualifications. But that was a cool story for Woodhead. It would have been cool to see him make it.
And so that's what we have next week. We've got the U.S. Open in Brookline, Massachusetts next week. So should be really interesting to see how the course is set up, how the first Liv tournament plays. The Phil Mickelson storylines will surely be rolling next week, assuming he comes back over to play in the U.S. Open. And it's always fun to talk major championship golf and what will surely be a difficult course test. So come back next week. We'll have you covered for the U.S. Open. Until then, enjoy the RBC Canadian Open. Thanks to Noto for joining me. Thanks to Steve for producing behind the scenes for us. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us. And check us out over at rotogrinders.com if you want to check out some of our projections and advanced lineup building tools, and of course premium articles and content from Noto and myself. Get yourself a premium subscription. You can also check us out at scoresandodds.com for some goodies on sports betting. So with that, we'll call it a week. Thanks again to Noto and Steve for producing. I'm Justin, and we'll see you next week, everybody, for the U.S. Open. Take care.